Today we're going to go ahead and take a look at lesson 4 of chapter 4, which is a continuation from lesson 3. Today we're going to be looking at adding and subtracting unlike fractions, okay? Prior to today's lesson, you guys were working on adding and subtracting like fractions, meaning that the denominators were already the same. Today we're going to be looking at situations where we have unlike fractions, meaning denominators are not going to be the same, so therefore we're going to have to find those common denominators. You can see you do have one vocab word, which is unlike fractions, so please make sure you take the time to fill that in on your vocab web. We're going to go ahead and jump to page 292 at the top and go ahead and take a look at some friendly reminders that we want to make sure we consider when we are adding or subtracting unlike fractions. Just taking a look, it says to add or subtract fractions with different denominators, first thing that we are going to want to do is to make sure that we rename the fractions using the least common denominator. So you guys are going to be thinking in terms of multiples and what your current denominators are and what would be numbers that those denominators would be multiples of them. Second thing is going to be adding or subtracting with your like fractions. Okay, so right here is going to be basically the step that we started with on lesson 3. Once you get it as like fractions, then you're going to be doing the same thing. And then last but not least, okay, making sure that we simplify. Okay, we always want to make sure that our answers are in simplest form. Please do not leave them as improper fractions as well. Make sure that they are simplified down. Okay, so before we can go ahead and add or subtract fractions with unlike denominators, we have to make sure that they have that common denominator. So as we take a look at example 1, they're asking us to find 1/2 plus 1/4. Okay, what you might do or what you want to consider first of all is as I take a look at these fractions, could I use one of those denominators already? I do know that 2 will go into 4, so because of that, I'm going to leave 4. If you can keep one of the denominators as the same, then it's going to be a lot easier because then you only have to change one of them, okay? So what I'm thinking right now is 1/2 would be the same as how many fourths? Okay, well 2 times 2 is 4, so therefore I'm going to take my top number, 1 times 2, and I'm going to get 2/4. So what I'm actually adding is 2/4 plus 1/4, which means I'm going to end up with 3/4. Okay, and you can see one of the methods that they give you is to use a number line. Number lines are a great idea, however, if you're working with large numbers, they're not always the most convenient method to use. If you're comfortable and you need to, or it helps you to draw one out, you're more than welcome to, but just use what's most convenient for you. Again, with our number lines, we always start at 0. I'm having 1/2, so I'm adding 1/2 plus another 1/4, and where do we end up? We end up at 3/4, which is what we came up with over here, okay? Method number 2, you're going to see that they're going to use their least common denominator. They are using the 4, and they come up with 3/4, okay? We're going to go ahead and take a look at Got It problems A through D together to kind of work through these together, so hopefully you have a good understanding, okay? Looking at letter A, I've got 1/6 plus 2/3. Again, my denominators are different, so I'm looking at them and just asking myself if I could keep one of those denominators. I do know that 6 is a multiple of 3, so I'm going to leave that one. So I'm going to leave it as 1/6 plus, so then I'm thinking 2/3 would be the same as how many 6? Well, 3 times 2 is 6, so 2 times 2 is 4. So what I've done is I've created 2 equivalent fractions. 2/3 is the same as 4/6. Now I can go ahead and add those. 1/6 plus 4/6 would be the same as 5/6, and it's in simplest form, so there's your answer. As I take a look at letter C, 1/4 plus 3/8. I know that 8 is a multiple of 4, so I'm going to change this one. 4 times 2 is 8, so 1 times 2 would be 2, plus, and then 3/8, that already has a denominator of 8, so I'm going to leave that. So I'm thinking 2 plus 3 would give me 5, and then 8 stays the same, and it's in simplest form, so our answer would be 5/8. If we take a look at letter B, I've got 9/10 plus negative 1/2. We have 2 different denominators, so unlike fractions. So again, I'm asking myself, can I keep one of these? 10 is a multiple of 2, so we're going to use 10. Because we're using 10 as a denominator, that first fraction is going to stay the same, so I'm going to leave that as 9/10 plus, I'm going to change 1/2 to a denominator of 10, so 2 times 5 would be 10, 1 times 5 is 5, and again it's a negative, so we're going to need to keep that negative with it. Now I can go ahead and add 9 plus negative 5. That's the same as basically taking 9 minus 5, which would be 4. And 10 is my denominator. Now, 4/10 can be simplified down. What you're asking yourself, what goes into both 4 and 10? Well, 2 can. 4 divided by 2 would be 2, and then 10 divided by 2 would be 5. So my answer is going to be 2/5. Letter D, as we take a look at this one, we have denominators of 3 and 4. I can't use either one of them, so therefore I'm thinking to myself, what would be the least common denominator for 3 and 12? Number that comes to mind for me is 12. So I'm going to rewrite both of these with a common denominator of 12. 3 times 4 is 12, so 1 times 4 would be 4, and that's a negative. 4 times 3 is 12, 1 times 3 is 3, and that one is a negative as well. You can see your negative signs that are out here. So I'm thinking negative 4 plus negative 3. Because these are both negatives, we're going to add 4 plus 3, and we would get 7. And we have to put the negative with it because they're both negatives. 12 is my denominator. It is in simplest form, so negative 7/12. As we take a look on the top of 293, they're giving you another example here. Denominators are 4 and 9 and 4. Common denominator, or what you might want to do is you could add these two together and combine those and then change them, or you could find a common denominator right away, which could possibly be 36. Either way is fine. What your book does is your book combines your negative 3/4 and your 7/4 together right away. When you're thinking negative 3 plus 7, you end up with negative 4/4, which is going to, or excuse me, 4/4, not negative 4/4, it's 4/4 because this is smaller, which is the same as 1, and then you end up actually adding it on. So in this case, it might be easier to go that route. Depends on the type of problem that you have. Remember, addition is commutative, meaning you can change the order that you add those because you're adding all of them, so you can add them in any order you like. Okay. As we take a look at got it problems E and F, we're going to work on these together here. I've got 2/5 plus 4/7 plus 3/5. Some of us might go ahead and take these two, the 2/5 and the 3/5, and add those together first because you already have common denominators. So I'm thinking 2/5 plus 3/5. Okay, and that's going to equal 2 plus 3 would give me 5, so that's 5/5, or the whole number 1. So now I've got 1 plus, I have not used 4/7 yet, so we're adding 1 plus 4/7, which is going to give us 1 and 4/7. Okay. Taking a look at letter F here, again, we might use the commutative property and add those two together. So I'm thinking negative 3/10 plus 23/10. Okay, if I take negative 3 plus 23, that's going to give me 20/10. And then I can simplify that down. 20 divided by 10 would be 2. So now I've got 2 plus 5/8. And 2 plus 5/8 is going to give us 2 and 5/8. So again, if you can combine your like terms or combine your terms that have the common denominators already and see what you get, and then add or subtract whatever else is, actually add in this case because we're looking at commutative property, add on the other numbers, it's going to be easiest to do it that way. Example 3, you've got negative 2/3 minus 1/2, so we're focusing on the subtraction aspect of it. Same thing like addition, we have to make sure that we have common denominators. So I can rewrite negative 2/3 with a common denominator of 6. 3 times 2 is 6, so 2 times 2 would be 4, so I'd have negative 4/6 minus 1/2, which would also be the same as negative 4/6 plus, oh, that's not right. Sorry. 2 times 3 is 6, so that's going to be a 6. Okay, and then 1 times 3 would be 3. My fault on that. Okay, so negative 4/6 plus, this was a positive, so this is going to become a negative 3/6. So I have negative 4 plus negative 3, which is going to give you negative 7/6, and you can see that right there. Now this would not be in simplest form. We want to make sure that we divide that out. Negative 7, or 7 divided by 6, 6 goes into 7 once. 7 minus 6 is 1, and then 6. So your answer to that one should be a -1 1/6. Using your number line, again, starting at 0, we're going to subtract 2/3 and then subtract 1/2, and you can see it matches up. Using least common denominator, what we just did. So there's a few got it problems on the bottom of 293 that we can go ahead and work on together, okay? Letter G is 5/8 minus 1/4. Again, you're thinking least common denominator. Looking at these, I know I could keep 8, so I'm going to write 5/8 minus 4 times 2 is 8, so 1 times 2 is 2. 5 minus 2 would give me 3, so my answer is going to be 3/8 in simplest form. 3/4 minus 1/3, I can't keep the 4 or the 3, so therefore I'm going to find a common denominator. Probably would use 12. Okay, so 4 times 3 is 12, 3 times 3 would be 9, minus 3 times 4 is 12, 1 times 4 is 4. So 9 minus 4 gives me 5, and 12 would be my denominator. So in simplest form, you'd have 5/12. And then looking at the last one, you have a 2 and a 5, so we probably would choose to use 10 for a denominator. 1/2 would be the same as 5/10, minus 2/5 is going to be the same as 4/10. Now you're going to notice that that was a negative, so we can change that to adding the opposite, so it'd be a positive. 5 plus 4 is going to be 9, and then your denominator stays as 10. Top of 294, again, they're giving you another story problem situation that you can go ahead and read through. Again, determining if you're going to be adding or subtracting, so you can take some time and read through that. Okay. Before you get started on your practice problems, I would like you to go ahead and complete your guided practice on page 294. You can go ahead and do questions 1 through 7. Pause the video to do those. Now that you've completed the guided practice problems on 294, numbers 1 through 7, let's take a look at what you came up with and what your answer should be. Number 1, you're looking at a common denominator of 10, so basically you would change this to 6/10 plus 1/10 would be 7/10 in simplest form. As I take a look at number 2, you've got 6 and 9, probably would use 18 as a common denominator. So when you've changed them to equivalent fractions, your answer should be -1 and 5/18. Number 3, looking at those, you probably want to combine your 7/8 and your 1/8 to get 8/8, which would be 1. And then you're going to add on 1 plus your 3/11, which therefore you can see is going to give you your 1 and 3/11. Taking a look at number 4, you've got 4/5 minus 3/10. Common denominator that you would use is probably 10. 4/5 would be the same as 8/10. 8 minus 3 would give you 5, so 5/10 equals 1/2. Number 5, common denominator probably should be 8, so 3/8 minus your -2/8, and then you're actually adding those, so 3 plus 2 gives you 5, so 5/8. And then number 6, 3/4 minus 1/3, common denominator, least common multiple would be 12. So you're changing those both to equivalent fractions with a denominator of 12, and then when you subtract them, we should come up with 5/12. And then number 7, the word problem that goes along with example 4. Cassandra's cutting 5/16 inch off the top of the photo and 3/8 inch off the bottom. How much shorter is the total height of the photo now? So you're looking at 5/16 and your 3/8, okay? Technically adding those two together, so you're going to end up with 11/16 of an inch. And then basically, to find how much smaller that height is now, you're going to add those two numbers together. Now that you've gone through the lesson, go ahead and feel free to work on the practice problems. Those numbers are on the website, and they will be found on page 297 is where you will be working next.